Chapter 1541. Little Pig curled his lips and said, "If you hadn't obtained the map of the Saint Monarch's tomb, everyone who entered this tomb would have turned into fertilizer for this Saint Realm flower and become a part of Feng Wuan's strength. At that time, not only would she be able to break through to the Saint Realm without any hindrance, she might even be able to directly advance to the Saint Realm with the help of the huge energy essence. After all, there were so many experts from various families and forces who came to the Saint Monarch's tomb. No one was a match for the fully grown blood phantom vine. If it weren't for Luo Qingtong, Feng Wuan could casually kill half of the people here. The energy essence contained in the blood-colored flower would be huge enough. Luo Qingtong finally understood the use of this blood-colored flower. But, this flower looks like it's about to wither. Can it still be saved? Luo Qingtong frowned. If she knew this flower was a Saint Realm flower, she wouldn't have been so heavy-handed just now. Now that this blood-colored flower was about to wither before it even bloomed, the blood-colored energy essence inside could no longer be used. Hee hee. Little Pig laughed when he heard this. If it were someone else, of course it wouldn't be saved. After all, this blood-colored flower grows with the energy of blood and death. But you're different. Little Pig said as he pointed at the life and death sword in Luo Qingtong's hand with his little hoof. Use this to transform into the form of the death blade and let it absorb the energy of death. Then, cut some blood to feed it. There won't be a problem. After all, this blood-colored flower was about to bloom. There was only one step left. With the energy of death contained in the death blade of the life and death blade and the power of Luo Qingtong's blood essence, there was absolutely no problem. Otherwise, Little Pig wouldn't have hurriedly called out to Luo Qingtong after seeing this blood-colored flower. Naturally, the other party had to be able to save him. Okay. Luo Qingtong's eyes shone brightly. If she could save this Saint Realm flower and consume it, she would be able to break through to the Saint Realm and leave this secret chamber. Su Yu and the others were still waiting for her outside. They didn't know that she was fine. At that time, there would definitely be chaos. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong immediately cut her wrist and dripped her blood on the flower bud. At the same time, the life and death yin-yang sword in her hand transformed into a death blade. The aura of death contained in it immediately excited the blood-colored flower. It desperately absorbed Luo Qingtong's blood and qi, as well as the qi of death emitted by the life and death sword. The petals around it opened little by little. While Luo Qingtong was feeding the blood-colored flower, outside, Su Yu and the others could not believe that Luo Qingtong had died just like that. They desperately dug at the collapsed palace of the sage monarch's tomb, trying to dig out the entrance. However, the palace of the sage monarch's tomb was nearly 1,000 meters underground. There was only a narrow entrance passage that extended several hundred meters to the surface. Under such circumstances, when the underground palace collapsed, the entrance passage was completely mixed with the surrounding sand and dust, no longer existing at all. Su Yu and the others knelt on the ground and dug for a long time, but they didn't manage to dig out anything. At this time, some of the people who had sworn allegiance to Luo Qingtong's family before the crisis of life and death were unwilling to do so. What the hell are you digging for? Chapter 1542. It's so deep and the tomb has collapsed. She must be dead. Let's go. There's no need to dig anymore. These people had chosen to pledge their loyalty to Luo Qingtong when they were in the Saint King's tomb and couldn't get any help from the heavens or the earth. Their loyalty was not very high. Moreover, now that the underground palace had collapsed, Luo Qingtong was already dead in their hearts. What was there to care about a dead person? Even if they had made an oath to heaven and earth. But after a person died, the oath to heaven and earth was invalid. Now, there was no need for them to listen to Su Yu and the others. As these people thought so, many of them got up and threw away the weapons in their hands, preparing to leave. Some of them were still thinking disdainfully, you can't blame them for being ungrateful. Who asked Luo Qingtong not to have lived long and was unlucky? She had died just like that. Naturally, they would not continue to pledge their loyalty to her because of a dead person. If these people from family who wanted to dig, then let them dig. They would not accompany them. As these people thought so, they immediately got up and prepared to leave. Some of them even had designs on family who, Suyu, and the others. These people must have benefited a lot from following Yi Jiu and the king of the southern region. They must have obtained a lot of things from the Saint King's tomb. Now that the people from the southern region were unconscious because of Yu Si Wang's injury, they immediately left the Saint King's tomb. They did not know what had happened at all. They could totally kill Su Yu and the others. Then, they could push the matter to another place. Many people thought so, and suddenly, they were very eager to make a move. Many pairs of eyes looked at Su Yu and the others with evil intentions. You. Looking at these people's eyes, Su Yu and the others, who were already very sad, were shocked and angry. These ingrates. Master should not have saved them before. Just as these people were about to attack Su Yu and the others with evil intentions. Bang, bang, bang. There was a series of muffled explosions. These people exploded into countless pieces in front of Su Yu and the others. Then, they quickly disappeared into thin air. Not even a trace of blood or flesh was left behind. This is the punishment of the heavenly Tao. They suddenly saw these people explode and die for no reason, and they were completely turned into ashes without a trace of flesh or flesh left behind. Everyone's faces were filled with shock. Especially those people from the family clans and forces who were also shaken and wanted to leave. They instantly froze. They did not attack Su Yu and the others, but they also wanted to leave and no longer be loyal to Luo Qingtong. In an instant, they sensed the arrival of the heavenly law. Cold sweat immediately appeared on everyone's faces. We were wrong. Wrong. We will no longer have any thoughts of betrayal. Please be merciful. Please, Master, please. Among those who wanted to attack Su Yu and the others, most of them were from the top family clans. Among them were a few family clan leaders. At this moment, all of them were turned into ashes in an instant. How would the remaining people dare to have any other thoughts? Immediately, the wavering thoughts in their hearts were forcibly suppressed, and they no longer dared to have any negative thoughts. Chapter 1543. On the other hand, Su Yu and the rest were pleasantly surprised. Master is fine. Everyone was almost crying tears of joy. Su Yu got up and wiped away the tears on her face. Let's go. Let's leave this place and find someone to save Master. Luo Qingtong was not dead. Master was in the underground palace. Su Yu and the rest were filled with emotions. There was no way they could stay here any longer. With their abilities, they would never be able to find a way to save Master from the underground palace. They had to leave immediately and head to the Black Field to ask Ming Zun for help. If Ming Zun helped, Master would definitely be fine. With this thought, everyone got up and prepared to leave. However, at this moment, a cold voice was suddenly heard from the front. Leave. Don't even think about leaving. As he spoke, a group of figures appeared in front of Su Yu and the rest. Who are you people? Su Yu and the rest looked at the group of people who appeared in front of them and instantly frowned. Especially Su Yu. She looked at the group of people in front of her and was very sure that they did not know them. Why did the other party suddenly appear and block their path? Humph. The group of people who appeared looked in the direction of Su Yu and the rest. One of the young men in green said coldly, "You don't have to care who we are. You just have to tell me where Yi Jiu is." As he spoke, his gaze swept across the group and fixed on Su Yu. Or rather, it was fixed on the thunder beast in her arms. Thunder beast. Looking at the little purple beast in the arms of the cold youth, the young man's face darkened. So it was you who took the things that I asked the Bai family to prepare. Speak. Where is the enlightened purple jade fruit? This young man was the one who had rushed to Wild City previously. He had brought a group of people to Wild City to retrieve the enlightened purple jade fruit and the thunder beast that he had asked the Bai family to prepare. He had made thorough preparations for these two things. Unless the Bai clan was a pig, it was impossible for them to fail. However, when he arrived at Wildland City, he found out that the Bai family had already been destroyed by family who. The leader was a young man called Yizhou. As for the Bai family's possessions, they should have all fallen into the hands of the other party. This time, the young man flew into a rage. The purple jade mind fruit and the thunder beast were things that he had set up a long time ago. They were of great use to him. That lightning beast, in particular, was something he had prepared for that person. Now that it had been snatched away by someone else, how could he tolerate it? After asking about the whereabouts of Luo Qingtong and the others, he immediately rushed over. Now that he saw the little thunder beast in Su Yu's arms, his heart immediately calmed down. With a whoosh, an extremely powerful and frightening power suddenly emerged from his body. In an instant, it enveloped Su Yu, family Hu, and the people from the family forces. Speak. Where is Yizhou? The enlightened purple jade fruit must be in the hands of the other party. The young man's voice was cold and filled with murderous intent. In an instant, the expressions of Su Yu and the others changed abruptly. Especially the people from the family forces. They looked at the young man, who was at most 30 years old, in shock. Holy Master. Chapter 1544. It had to be known that in the Sky Spill continent, a saint was already considered a peak powerhouse. The Huo family head, the Ouyang family head, and the others were all saints. But how long had they been cultivating? How long had this young man been cultivating? What shocked them even more was that after the young man's aura erupted, the group of young men and women behind him all released their auras. Saint Realm. Saint Realm. Beyond the Saint Realm. There was no one below the Saint Realm. Most importantly, these people looked to be no more than 20 years old. A 20-year-old Saint Realm powerhouse. So many. The people from the family forces were all horrified. Su Yu and the others from the heavenly diabolism knew that this young man was the one mentioned by Bai Jintang before, the powerhouse from the hidden world that the Bai family had hooked up with. It was a Saint Master powerhouse. And there were so many Saint Realm powerhouses by his side. Su Yu and the others felt their hearts turn cold. It wasn't because of the bad situation they were about to face, but for Luo Qingtong who was still in the underground palace. Nothing could happen to them. Otherwise, who would inform the Black Field to come and save Master? Su Yu made a prompt decision: go. Scatter and leave immediately. Those who are alive, go to the Black Field immediately and don't look back. Following her shout, the lightning beast in her arms instantly flew up into the air. Its figure became extremely large in an instant. It roared wildly and tore at the young man's power. The thunder beast was one of the most ferocious and powerful saint beasts. It had already advanced to the saint realm, and its strength soared when it went crazy. Although it was only temporary, and it might not be a match for this saint master. But it was enough to tear apart the opponent's power and restore Su Yu and the others' freedom. Humph. You think you can be so arrogant just because you have a thunder beast? I'm afraid you haven't seen a true beast taming technique. The young man sneered. He suddenly raised his hand and a seal formed in his hand. That seal was very strange. It was filled with all kinds of demonic beast patterns. As soon as the beast spell was formed, the young man waved his hand and the beast spell entered the body of the thunder beast in front of him. After doing all this, the young man crossed his arms and sneered, waiting for the lightning beast to lose control and escape from the other party's control. Even though they didn't know what the other party was relying on to command the lightning beasts, once their beast-taming King Valley used their beast-taming art, the other party's orders would immediately lose their effect. Wanting to use lightning beasts to deal with them, the other party was really wrong. The thing that their beast-taming King Valley feared the least was demonic beasts. However, just as he was thinking about this, he suddenly heard a roar. Then, with a tearing sound, the net of aura that enveloped Su Yu and the others was torn apart. What? The sneer on the young man's face froze. As he watched his aura shroud being torn apart, his heart was filled with indescribable disbelief. How was this possible? To think that he hadn't taken control of the other party's lightning beast. Could it be that the other party's beast-taming technique was of a higher level than his? How was this possible? How could there be a beast-taming technique that was of a higher level than their beast-taming King Valley's beast-taming technique? Chapter 1545. As the young man thought about it, the way he looked at Su Yu changed. After Su Yu had the lightning beast tear through the opponent's aura, she shouted, "Let's go." Following her shout, the group of people from the Hu clan and the other clans and forces did not dare to delay. Immediately, they desperately mobilized the strength in their bodies and ran out. However, as soon as they moved, a roar that sounded like a dragon's roar and a tiger's roar sounded around them. At that instant, several enormous figures appeared in all directions. They were saint-level demonic beasts with their mouths wide open, roaring at them fiercely. The tyrannical aura that was revealed caused everyone's expression to change. So many demon beasts. You are all beast tamers. The family forces in Wildland City and other cities all looked at the young man and his group in shock. These people were all beast tamers. They were people from the hidden world. Humph. The young man sneered and flew up to the head of a multicolored sacred tiger, looking down at the shocked people of the family forces below. That's right, we are from the Beast Tamer Valley. We are from the hidden world. You have piqued my interest. He looked coldly in the direction of Su Yu. You can actually resist the beast-taming art from our Beast-Tamer Valley. The contract technique you used is definitely not ordinary. He waved his hand as he spoke, "Take them all away. I want to interrogate them properly." He wanted the beast-taming art and Yi Jiu's whereabouts. He did not believe that the other party could withstand his many methods. In their Beast-Tamer Valley, there were many ways to torture people. He could guarantee that he would make these people spill the whole truth. Su Yu and the others were all restrained and taken away. When it was Chu Lingfeng's turn, the group of Beast-Tamer Valley people all frowned. The other party's body was covered in blood. It was unknown what kind of vines had pierced through his body. At this moment, he looked like he was on the verge of death. None of them wanted to seek trouble with that person. They immediately looked at the young man and said, "Senior brother, this person seems to be dead for sure. We don't need to bring him along, right?" "Yes." The young man glanced at Chu Lingfeng and immediately concluded that he wouldn't be able to survive. He immediately said in a deep voice, "Just leave him there." The other party was so heavily injured. If he wasn't bitten to death by ferocious beasts following the scent of blood, then he would slowly die on his own. There was no need to pay attention to him at all. The crowd abandoned Chu Lingfeng and immediately took Su Yu and the others away. The latter were all knocked unconscious and carried on the backs of a group of demonic beasts. Then, the demonic beasts rushed forward. That was where they would stay. As for the savage city, they would not go there. The young man found out that the identity of the young man called Yi Jiu was very mysterious. Not only did he have the protection of the southern region king, but he also had the protection of the Dark Colosseum. And Su Yu and the others had just called out the name of the Black Field. Regardless of whether the other party was speaking the truth or not, they were not as wanton in the Sky-Spill continent as they were in the hidden world. The young man absolutely would not allow any mishaps to occur when he took back the amethyst heart fruit and the thunder beast. Chapter 1546. The wilderness in the far west wilderness was quite suitable for them to settle down. They would leave immediately after they interrogated the contract method and Yijio's whereabouts and obtained the purple heart enlightened fruit. So what if the people from the Dark Arena and the Black Field came to find trouble with them? The other party might not know that they were the ones who attacked. When they finally succeeded, they would definitely kill the group of people in their hands and the young man called Yijio. The young man's face was cold, and his eyes were cold and fierce. After they left, Chu Lingfeng, who was motionless like a corpse, struggled to get up at this moment. Master! Mother! His eyes were blood red, and Hu Yinyang's voice echoed in his mind, Feng, don't move. No matter what, don't move. Pretend that you are dying. Then, go to the Black Field. Find the Lord to save Master. Don't care about Mother. Did you hear that? Otherwise, I won't recognize you as my son. Master. Mother. Chu Lingfeng's eyes were filled with tears of blood. He struggled to get up and tore off the vines on his body one by one. Even though he was in so much pain that his whole body was twitching and screaming, he refused to stop. He lay on the ground and crawled little by little in the direction of the wild city. Master! Master! Save Master! Save Mother! Chu Lingfeng's mouth was full of blood foam. The blood spilled all over the ground, dragging a long and thick blood trail under his body. In the secret chamber, Luo Qingtong poured her blood and the death aura of the life and death sword into the blood-red flower. The latter's petals opened little by little. Soon, the entire sage land flower bloomed. The rich essence of blood and qi was emitted from it. This blood-red flower was formed by the infusion of blood and qi of death. But because it was the condensation of essence, the entire sage land flower didn't look bloody and dark at all. That blooming blood-red color was as bright and translucent as a red agate, extremely translucent. There was even a hint of holiness in it. This Saint Realm flower already contained a trace of the Great Path's law and could help one enter the Saint Realm directly. And he had no worries at all. Luo Qingtong looked at the blooming flower and plucked it before putting it into her mouth. Buzz! As the Holy Land flower entered his body, in an instant, Luo Qingtong's aura began to surge violently. At this moment, all the energy in her meridians was filled to the brim with the essence of the saint flower, and it quickly turned into her own energy. At the same time, the sage flower contained a trace of the power of the Great Way and the comprehension of the laws. With a boom, it entered Luo Qingtong's mind. In an instant, a blood-red light appeared above Luo Qingtong's head. Then, with a boom, the aura of her entire body surged out violently in an instant. Above her head, a brilliant rosy light was formed. The surrounding spiritual qi of heaven and earth involuntarily resonated and trembled with the power that surged out in an instant. The power of the Saint Realm. The full primordial realm. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's spiritual consciousness seemed to have merged with the earth and space. From now on, there was no distinction between them. Chapter 1547. With a swoosh, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly opened. The blood-red light in her eyes swirled like a knife. It was like the world's most resplendent jewel and the most gorgeous jade. She had reached the Saint Realm. Luo Qingtong raised her hand and took out the manual that she had put away before. After reaching the Saint Realm, she still needed to cultivate a martial art technique and cultivation method. The martial art technique that she had learned from the martial emperor of the Tianyu Empire was no longer useful to her. If she only had Yi Qianqian's heaven-conquering art, it would be too monotonous. Most importantly, as her strength increased in the future, she would use this heaven-conquering art more often, and it would inevitably be exposed. The man's move was so powerful that it was better to use it as a trump card. She hadn't found a suitable cultivation method or martial art technique before, so she frequently used the man's move. But now that she had this manual, she didn't have to worry so much. Thinking so, Luo Qingtong immediately raised her hand and opened the manual. It recorded all kinds of cultivation methods and martial arts techniques of various stages. Luo Qingtong didn't look at anything else, only staring at the pages from the saint realm to the sage realm. The cultivation methods and martial arts techniques of the saint realm and beyond were a little weak for her. Luo Qingtong carried the blood pupil technique and her strength was incomparably strong. Plus, she had the life and death yin-yang sword in her hand. If she really used her full strength, ordinary saint realm experts were no match for her at all. Only the peak experts of the saint realm could barely resist her. Similarly, it was the same for those who had surpassed the saint realm. Luo Qingtong could tie with ordinary experts who had surpassed the saint realm, or even suppress them. And only the experts who had surpassed the saint realm could barely suppress her. And this was also the case that Luo Qingtong hadn't used the heaven-conquering art yet. So, with such strength, how could Luo Qingtong learn cultivation methods and martial arts techniques of these two realms? Her eyes were naturally placed on the saints and sacred experts a level above. Luo Qingtong's gaze lingered on the manual. Soon, she took a fancy to a cultivation method and martial skill. Bloody cross slash. Luo Qingtong looked at the name of this cultivation method and martial skill and smiled. What an interesting name. Moreover, the power and effect were very much in line with Luo Qingtong's requirements. Buzz. The blood-red pupils in her eyes were activated. In the blink of an eye, Luo Qingtong imprinted the martial technique demonstration diagrams on the secret manuals into her bloody eyes. In Luo Qingtong's eyes, the martial techniques were continuously broken down and evolved. In the next second, Luo Qingtong's figure suddenly flew up. Blood cross slash. The life and death yin-yang sword in her hand was split into two and held in Luo Qingtong's hand. Life on one side, death on the other. Luo Qingtong brandished her long sword. In the next second, two saber lights, one black and one white, carrying boundless blood-red and fierce light, swept forward violently. The two sword lights, one above the other, formed a huge cross in the air. Then, carrying an incomparably violent and fierce blood-red aura, it rushed forward with a power that surpassed the saint realm. Boom! 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 The entire secret room trembled faintly. Smoke and dust filled the air, and fog filled the air. The stone table in front of her was suddenly deeply imprinted by Luo Qingtong's double sword cross slash. Very good. Luo Qingtong's lips curled up slightly. She put away the life and death yin-yang sword in her hand. She was very satisfied with the power of this move. If an ordinary person who had surpassed the saint realm was here, he would have been killed by her, right? Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong immediately walked to the wall where the formation was hidden. Chapter 1548. She raised her hand and pressed her palm against the wall with a bang, injecting the energy in her body into it. Buzz! After a series of tremors, a hidden array formation suddenly appeared on the wall. As Luo Qingtong's energy poured in, the lines of the array lit up one by one. Then, with a bang, Luo Qingtong's figure was wrapped in a dazzling white light. In the next second, her figure disappeared from the secret chamber. The far west wilderness, the wilderness. Less than 200 meters away from the Saint King's tomb, Chu Lingfeng's figure was moving on the ground with difficulty. His speed was getting slower and slower. His body was surrounded by blood, and it was accumulating more and more. With such serious injuries, if it were anyone else, they would have died. But Chu Lingfeng relied on his powerful body's regenerative ability to hold on until now. But he was about to reach his limit. No. He couldn't die. He couldn't die. He still had to go to the Black Field to find the Lord to save his master and mother. Chu Lingfeng's gaze was fixed in the direction of the wild city. There. As long as he reached there, he could get someone to inform the people in the Black Field, and he could save his master and mother. His figure was moving on the ground with all his might. At this moment, roar. A series of sharp and ear-piercing howls suddenly came from behind him. A series of ferocious-looking demonic beasts appeared from behind the mound not far behind him. Those pairs of green eyes looked in his direction greedily and covetously. Warriors. Warriors with a large amount of blood and chi essence in their bodies. It was their favorite delicacy. Not only could it fill their stomachs, but it could also increase their strength. Roar! One after another, the ferocious howls came. More and more ferocious beasts followed the scent of the large amount of blood flowing out of Chu Lingfeng's body. They looked at him greedily and covetously as they slowly walked over. Roar! Listening to the low growls coming from their mouths, Chu Lingfeng's face was filled with despair. Master, Mother, I'm sorry. He grabbed the turf under him fiercely and tried to stand up, but he couldn't. He was too badly injured. He had already done his best to stay alive. It was impossible for him to fight again. Just as Chu Lingfeng's face was filled with despair, streaks of white light lit up in the sky above where the Saint King's tomb had collapsed. Luo Qingtong's figure appeared from it. Swoosh! Luo Qingtong's figure. With a light tap of her foot in the air, she spun around and flew to an open space on the side. Su Yu and the others have already left. Luo Qingtong looked at the place where the underground palace collapse was located. There were obvious traces there. Obviously, Su Yu and the others wanted to save her, but they couldn't do anything. Could it be that they had left to look for reinforcements? Luo Qingtong only had to think to guess what Su Yu and the others were thinking at that time. Her heart warmed slightly, and she turned to leave. At this moment, her eyes suddenly swept across the scene next to her, and instantly froze. She looked at the thick blood trail that Chu Lingfeng had crawled out and fixed her gaze on the blood-colored vines that had been discarded around. Chapter 1549. Obviously, it was pulled out from his body by force. Chu Lingfeng. Luo Qingtong immediately thought of Chu Lingfeng, and her expression changed instantly. Not for other reasons, but because Chu Lingfeng was so seriously injured, Su Yu and the others would definitely not leave him alone. Not to mention that they pulled out the vines from his body so simply and violently. Not good. Luo Qingtong's expression turned cold. Su Yu and the others are in trouble. Swish! Her figure swept towards the place where Chu Lingfeng was crawling. At this moment, those salivating beasts suddenly launched an attack after discovering that Chu Lingfeng, a delicacy in their eyes, had no power to fight back. Roar! Their voices roared, and their figures swept out in an instant, biting fiercely towards Chu Lingfeng. Their bloody mouths were full of disgusting saliva and sharp, cold teeth. Their figures swept violently, and in an instant, they appeared beside Chu Lingfeng, biting and tearing him apart. At this moment, a slender and weak figure appeared beside Chu Lingfeng in an instant faster than them. Clang! A demonic beast that was the first to rush in front of Chu Lingfeng and bite him was suddenly stopped in its mouth by a sharp and cold sword. With a crunch, it bit down on the body of the long sword. In the next second, the long sword suddenly waved. Blood cross slash. As this incomparably cold and sharp voice sounded, in an instant, the long sword suddenly bloomed with thousands of brilliance. A huge blood-red cross suddenly flew out. The cross spun, as sharp as a knife. In an instant, the ferocious beasts that were pouncing towards Chu Lingfeng were all sent flying by the sword. The sound was sharp, resounding, and incomparably mournful. Bang, bang, bang. The surroundings were full of exploded flesh and blood and broken corpses. Luo Qingtong stood in the rain of blood with a sword in her hand. She was stunning and domineering, and her eyes were sharp. Buzz! The life and death dual-right sword in her hand hummed and trembled slightly, making the bloody land around her look like a hellish azure field. Get lost! Luo Qingtong's voice was cold, and her sharp eyes swept across the remaining beasts around her. Those beasts did not dare to stay any longer. Based on the keen intuition of beasts, they could feel that the youth in front of them was very dangerous. A group of beasts quickly retreated with their tails between their legs. Luo Qingtong hurriedly squatted down and helped Chu Lingfeng up. Chu Lingfeng, what's going on? Where are Su Yu and the others? Luo Qingtong raised her hand and sealed several of his acupoints, forcibly forcing out the potential of his life from his body. She then raised her hand and fed him a bottle of medicinal pills. When she appeared, the latter's eyes were already red with excitement. Tears of blood continued to fall from his eyes. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. His injuries were so serious that he did not even have the strength to speak. It was not until Luo Qingtong gave him a bottle of medicinal pills and treated him a little that Chu Lingfeng recovered. Master! Save! He tightly grasped Luo Qingtong's hand and stared in the direction that the group of people from beast-taming King's Valley left. Su Yu! Mother! Beast-taming King's Valley. Chapter 1550. I got it. Luo Qingtong looked at the direction he was looking at, and the bloody light in her eyes, layer after layer, with an incomparably cold and murderous aura, surrounded him. She raised her hand to summon Snowball, and let it take Chu Lingfeng back to the wild city to receive treatment and recuperation. Then she lifted the long sword in her hand, and flew in the direction Chu Lingfeng was looking at. Beast-taming King Valley. A transcendent sect in the hidden world that almost no one dared to provoke. Luo Qingtong thought of the words Yu Siwang had said to her about beast-taming King Valley, and the bloody light in her eyes became more and more piercingly cold. If the other party dared to touch her people, not to mention beast-taming King Valley, even if it was the Heavenly Emperor, she would still kill without hesitation. Luo Qingtong's figure swept forward quickly. The information that Chu Lingfeng said was very incomplete. If it was someone else, it would naturally be very difficult to find the traces of those people. But for Luo Qingtong, it was not very difficult. The bloody pupil in her eyes opened. The surrounding scene, at an extremely fast speed, retreated in her eyes. Time and space backtracking. Luo Qingtong's supreme eye technique could backtrack the scene that had happened before in a short time. In the past, her strength was not enough, and she could not use it unscrupulously. But now, her strength had broken through to the sage realm, and her spiritual power had also been greatly enhanced. When he used this eye technique, he could rewind more scenes in time. Swish! Luo Qingtong's eyes reflected everything around her. The scenes and images inside flashed past her eyes as if she was looking at flowers on horseback. Soon, she found the past scenes of Su Yu and the others. Watching those people from beast-taming King Valley knock them all out, tied them on the back of the demon beast and took them away, Luo Qingtong's eyes became colder and colder. Especially when she heard that the leading young man wanted to force out her whereabouts and Su Yu's method of contracting the thunder beast by reading his lips, the murderous intent in Luo Qingtong's eyes seemed to burst out like a real substance. Her figure was incomparably fast, and she chased after the group of people from beast-taming King Valley. After Luo Qingtong left, Chu Lingfeng, who was carried on Snowball's back, suddenly remembered something. He forgot to tell Luo Qingtong about the strength of the group of people from beast-taming King Valley. Not good. Master is in danger. Chu Lingfeng was anxious. He struggled to sit up on Snowball's back and patted it. No, you can't do that. Quick. We're not going to Wild City. Take me to the nearest Blackfield city. He was going to find Ming Zun to save Luo Qingtong. That group of people from beast-taming King Valley were all Sage Realm cultivators. There was also a group of contracted demon beasts. Not only that, the leading young man was also a Sage Realm cultivator. It's too dangerous for Master to rush there so rashly. Chu Lingfeng thought so, and in an instant, his heart was filled with anger and anxiety. His eyes were blood red, and there was no way for him to forgive himself. What if something happened to Master? He anxiously patted Snowball's back, and the wound that Luo Qingtong had just stopped bleeding burst open. Blood from the wound splashed out, and Snowball's snow-white fur was dyed blood red. The latter was somewhat hesitant, not knowing whether to listen to him or Luo Qingtong. But soon, it chose to listen to Chu Lingfeng. Chapter 1551. The little Snowball turned around and headed for the nearest city in the Blackfield Citadel. Under its feet, its four hooves stirred up the wind, and its speed was extremely fast. It was practically as fast as lightning as it flew towards the nearest city of the Black region. While Chu Lingfeng and Snowball were rushing towards the nearest city in the Blackfield, Luo Qingtong had also caught up with the group of people from beast-taming King's Valley. After those people took Su Yu and the others to the depths of the wilderness of the Western Wilderness for some distance, they put them down. After all, there were very few people who could enter the depths of the wildlands. The demonic beasts ran amok in the surroundings and they would attack any cultivators they saw. However, the people from beast-taming King's Valley had contracted demonic beasts as mounts and the demonic beasts were extremely powerful. As a result, the demonic beasts in the wildlands all avoided them from a distance. Beasts had the ability to turn good luck into bad luck. Sensing the strength of the demonic beasts contracted by the people from beast-taming King's Valley, they would not deliberately provoke them. Therefore, the people from beast-taming King's Valley did not have to worry about encountering danger here. Not to mention meeting other people here and bumping into them. Now you can tell me where that Yi Jiu is. Also, where did you learn your method of beast taming? The young man ordered to put Su Yu and the rest down and at the same time, he ordered people to wake Su Yu and the rest up. He walked in front of Su Yu and raised his hand to pinch her chin, forcing her to raise her head. Stop dreaming. I won't tell you. Su Yu's gaze was cold. From the other party's words, she could tell that the method Master used to help her contract the Thunder Beast was definitely not simple. These people originally wanted to find trouble with Master. How could she tell them the origin of this method of contract and make them even more unfavorable to Master? These people must be dreaming. Su Yu's gaze was full of contempt. The disdain and coldness hidden in her gaze caused the young man's face to darken. Good. You're good. He sneered and tightened his grip on Su Yu's neck. It almost broke Su Yu's jaw. I hope you're still as stubborn as before. As he spoke, he said to the people around him, Bring me my tools of torture. At this moment, he swept his gaze around and suddenly saw the scene in front of Su Yu. Then, he laughed. Ha! I didn't expect you to be a woman. As soon as he said that, Su Yu's expression changed. She lowered her head and saw a large patch of wet clothes clinging to her chest. It was the water that these people had splashed on her. The water had soaked her clothes and exposed her tightly wrapped bosom. The woman's identity was immediately exposed. All right. The young man sneered at her and said, That saves me a lot of trouble. As he spoke, his gaze swept over Su Yu's face with evil intentions. Looking at your appearance, you're still a virgin. He sneered at Su Yu and said, I'll give you one last chance. Tell me the whereabouts of Yi Jiu. And tell me where you got your method of beast taming. Otherwise, I don't mind letting you know what it's like to have many men. As he spoke, he called all the male disciples of the beast-taming King Valley outside. If they're not enough, there are many contracted demonic beasts outside. Therefore, in the Blackfield slave market, she was unscrupulous and did not listen to anyone's orders. She only wanted a quick death. However, Luo Qingtong's appearance changed her. The evil young man who was called the evil Dr. Ghost was actually a young girl. The moment Suyu opened her mouth and revealed her true voice, she recognized the other party as her master. After all, falling into the hands of such a young girl was better than falling into the hands of those disgusting men, wasn't it? However, her master changed her life. Chapter 1553. Master. Suyu has no regrets in this life. I hope to be able to serve under you again in my next life and continue to repay your kindness. As Suyu thought of this, she suddenly opened her eyes and looked at the young man with a sneer. She said coldly, "Trash from the beast-taming King Valley can only use such disgusting methods. What powerful sect from the hidden world? What beast-taming master? They're just maggots that are more disgusting than trash. Come at me if you have the ability. I'm afraid that with your small bodies, you won't be able to satisfy me." Suyu's jade-like face was full of coldness and disdain. That pair of extremely beautiful and heroic phoenix eyes slanted as she looked at the young man and the others, as if they were nothing more than a group of jumping clowns. Want her to reveal everything related to her master? Even if she was humiliated to death, it was impossible. These people from the beast-taming King Valley, come at me if you have the ability. Impudent. Looking at Suyu's gaze that was like looking at a disgusting maggot, the young man who had been waiting for her to yield suddenly became angry. Good, good, good. He was so angry that he laughed. Since you want to have a taste, I'll fulfill your wish. The young man's face was cold. Since the other party didn't know what was good for them, he didn't need to be merciful. After all, even if he tortured the other party to death, there were still so many people around. He didn't believe that the others would be as unyielding as her. This time, he would kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Do it. The young man ordered coldly. Those male disciples of the beast-taming King Valley who were already tempted immediately pounced on Suyu. The lecherous look on their faces made people want to vomit. Suyu. Hu Yinyang and the others violently struggled. However, their bodies were restrained by the young man's aura and they couldn't break free. They could only watch with tears in their eyes as those people pounced on Suyu. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from behind them. You're courting death by touching my people. As the voice rang out, a sword light suddenly flew out and slashed towards the young man and the others. Spread out. The young man instantly frowned when he sensed the sword light flying over. Then, he shouted in a stern voice. Yes. The group of beast-taming King's Valley members who were surrounding Suyu immediately scattered in all directions. The sword light immediately blasted towards Suyu, who was exposed in the middle. However, just as the sword light was about to hit Suyu, another sword light suddenly chased after her from behind. In an instant, it caught up with the previous sword light. Boom! The two sword lights collided in midair. In the blink of an eye, they vanished into thin air. Amidst the fluctuating spiritual energy of heaven and earth, a figure slowly appeared nearby. Master! The moment the figure appeared, Suyu's eyes filled with tears. She looked at the figure who walked out from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth with a sword in his hand and felt a wave of excitement in her heart. Then, her expression changed abruptly and she hurriedly shouted, Master! Leave quickly! They're from the beast-taming King's Valley. They're here for the lightning beast and the amethyst jade fruit. They're also after the lightning beast's contract method. Leave quickly. Chapter 1554. Following Su Yu's voice, Hu Yin-yang and the rest also looked towards the front where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was rampaging. When they saw Luo Qingtong's figure appear, everyone's eyes were filled with tears. But soon, they followed Su Yu's lead and started to shout. Mistress, leave quickly. Mistress, don't worry about us. Luo Qingtong's figure walked out from the rampaging spiritual energy of heaven and earth in front of them. The youth was holding a sword, her black hair draped over her shoulders. A strand of hair on her forehead fluttered slightly, covering half of her eyes. That pair of peerless eyes revealed a fierce blood-red color, as cold as a sword and as sharp as a knife. That black robe on other people might be a little too dull and gloomy, but on her body, it revealed a peerless elegance that could topple cities. Just like a gorgeous azura that walked out from the depths of purgatory, just the aura on her body was enough to kill everyone. Mistress! Don't speak, back off. Luo Qingtong's voice was cold. Her gaze swept past Su Yu and the rest. When she saw the faintly discernible scenery in front of Su Yu's chest, the coldness in her eyes surged even more fiercely. She had just arrived nearby. She had heard everything the young man had said. The other party was really courting death. Bang! Luo Qingtong waved the long sword in her hand. She directly broke the aura that the young man used to imprison Su Yu, Hu Yin-yang and the rest. Everyone leave. She coldly said to Su Yu and the rest. No. Mistress, we won't leave. Su Yu looked at Luo Qingtong with tears in her eyes. How could they leave Luo Qingtong alone here to face these people from beast-taming King Valley? Mistress, quickly leave. They're too strong. You alone. Before Su Yu could finish her words, the young man's cold voice sounded from the other side. Leave. None of you can leave. He stared coldly at Luo Qingtong with the rest of the beast-taming King's Valley members. You are that Yi Zhou. He looked at Luo Qingtong's face. Although the aura of the other party and the people of Wild City were different from what he had described. However, to be able to make Su Yu and the others so nervous, to the point where they repeatedly called out for their master and urged the other party to leave quickly, clearly, they had found the right person. This young man should be Yi Zhou. Very good. The young man sneered. He had no idea how the other party had found him. However, since they had captured so many people, it was normal for her to track some of them. Since the other party had come, then don't even think about leaving. With that thought in mind, the young man waved his hand. Catch her. The other party must have the purple jade brightheart fruit on him. There was also that young girl named Su Yu. Wasn't she determined not to reveal the origin of the lightning beast contract technique? When they caught this young man named Yi Zhou, they didn't believe that she wouldn't give in. Following the young man's command, the young man's voice rang out. In an instant, a beast-taming King's Valley disciple with a cultivation that surpassed the sage realm flew towards Luo Qingtong. Senior brother, let me do it. His expression was arrogant as he looked at Luo Qingtong with eyes full of disdain. The other party looked no more than 15 or 16 years old. At such an age, in the secular world of the Sky Spill continent, the most he could reach was the peak of the martial spirit realm. With such strength, he could easily capture and kill him. However, just in case, he let the other party escape. Chapter 1555. Great Capturing Hand. His hands instantly shot towards Luo Qingtong like hooks. The powerful aura that poured out instantly stirred up the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual energy, causing it to violently tumble. In an instant, the wind and clouds surged, and the spiritual energy changed. Master! Seeing this scene, Su Yu and the others' hearts suddenly tightened. At this moment, Luo Qingtong raised her hand, and slashed out with her sword. Bang! An incomparably dazzling blood-red light suddenly flew towards the beast-tamer valley disciple in a cross shape. It was a step faster than his attack speed and smashed into his body. In an instant, the beast-tamer valley disciple let out an incomparably tragic cry as he was ruthlessly sent flying by the sword light. His face was full of horror. Looking at Luo Qingtong, his eyes were no longer cold and disdainful, only a light of disbelief remained. How was this possible? He was sent flying with a single move. His opponent's strength clearly hadn't surpassed the Saint Realm. That's right, when Luo Qingtong attacked, her Saint Realm aura had already been revealed without reservation. Looking at the youth floating in the air with a powerful aura, the young man and the others' complexions all changed. Saint Realm. A 15 or 16-year-old Saint Realm powerhouse. Even among the super sects in the hidden world, the other party's potential could be ranked at the top. Not to mention that this youth had sent a Saint Realm powerhouse flying with a single sword strike. The beast-tamer valley disciple just now couldn't be considered strong amongst those who had surpassed the Saint Realm, but he could be considered above average. But he had actually been sent flying with a single sword strike. Seeing his own junior brother vomit blood as he was sent flying and heavily smashed into the ground, unconscious in an instant, the young man's face became solemn. All of you, attack together. We can't let him escape. The young man's complexion was dignified. With this youth's strength, he even suspected that this youth had come from their hidden world and had concealed his identity to gain experience in the mortal world of the Sky Spill continent. Even if this wasn't the case, the influence behind this youth couldn't be underestimated. If that was the case, then he couldn't let the other party escape. Otherwise, the consequences would be endless. With that thought in mind, the young man waved his sleeves decisively. He released all the energy in his body, enveloping Su Yu's group and suppressing them. They were not allowed to act recklessly. Otherwise, these people would be too eager to protect their master and ruin their plans, letting Luo Qingtong escape. At the same time, the disciples of beast-taming King's Valley gathered together and attacked Luo Qingtong. Boom! Everyone displayed their strength, and the aura around them surged, causing the surrounding heaven and earth spirit chi to tremble. They didn't use their contracted demonic beasts. In their opinion, with so many of them, it was enough to deal with Luo Qingtong. So what if the other party's talent and strength were even more powerful? Sage Realm experts might be able to stop those who had surpassed the Sage Realm, but could they stop so many of them? Not to mention, they still hadn't found out the whereabouts of the Purple Heart Fruit and the origin of the Thunder Beast contract technique. They still needed to leave Luo Qingtong alive. If they used their contracted demonic beasts, their attacks would be too strong. What if they weren't careful enough and accidentally killed the other party? Chapter 1556. Their attacks bombarded Luo Qingtong one after another. 7 to 8 consecutive attacks. Unless there was a Saint Realm expert present, there was no way to dodge them. Su Yu and the others struggled with all their might under the young man's suppression. Mistress! Mistress! They roared with all their might, trying to break free from the young man's restraint. However, the other party was already prepared. Under the full force of a Saint Realm expert's suppression, they felt as if they were trapped in a quagmire, unable to move at all. Just as Su Yu and the others were extremely anxious and worried, Luo Qingtong glanced at the young man with a sneer on his face. Then, the corners of her lips curled up. The other party's actions were exactly what she wanted. Since these beast-taming King's Valley disciples wanted to deliver food to her, then they couldn't blame her for swinging her blade. Bang! Luo Qingtong's figure swept up in an instant. In her left hand, the heart of the thousand-year soul guiding tree suddenly appeared. At this moment, the power of the Saint King's soul entered Luo Qingtong's body. In an instant, the blood-colored cross in her hand shot out explosively. Like a giant meat grinder, it flew towards the group of beast-taming Kings Valley disciples who were charging towards her. What? Seeing the blood-colored light rush out in an instant, the young man's pupils instantly contracted. He could feel the powerful force contained in that attack. Luo Qingtong's attack was enough to kill all the beast-taming Kings Valley disciples. Not good. The young man's figure instantly rushed out, wanting to stop Luo Qingtong. However, it was too late. Previously, in order to prevent Su Yu and the others from rescuing Luo Qingtong, he deliberately enveloped them with all his strength to suppress them. Now, even if he immediately withdrew, it would be difficult to mobilize all his strength in an instant. He hurriedly blasted out an attack, but it was shattered by Luo Qingtong's blood-colored cross. She spun in the air and with an extremely domineering stance, she charged towards the group of beast-taming Kings Valley members who were rushing towards her, intending to injure her and capture her. Bang! The ground was covered in a rain of blood. Infused with the power of the Saint King's soul, the blood-colored attack easily beheaded the beast-taming Kings Valley disciples. The latter and the others didn't expect Luo Qingtong, a Saint Realm expert, to be able to display such terrifying power. They were almost unable to resist and died by the blood-colored cross. The sky was filled with flying flesh and blood and limbs. Luo Qingtong was a Saint King's swords. She held the life and death yin-yang sword in her hand, the sword's hands of lifelessons' heart. Bastard! The young man rushed over, but he couldn't catch up to Luo Qingtong's sword. He saw the beast-taming Kings Valley disciples being cut into countless pieces by Luo Qingtong's blood-colored sword light. Their deaths were incomparably miserable. His eyes instantly turned blood-red. You deserve to die. He looked at Luo Qingtong with bloodshot eyes. He didn't know how Luo Qingtong could unleash such a powerful and terrifying move. But the opponent's attack was useless against him. She killed their beast-taming Kings Valley disciples, so he wanted the other party to pay with blood. Chapter 1557. Bastard! I want you dead. At this moment, the purple heart fruit and the lightning beast contract method were all thrown to the back of his mind. He wanted to kill Luo Qingtong and avenge his junior brothers. As for the items, he would slowly search for them after killing them. Boom! That young man quickly attacked Luo Qingtong. At the same time, Su Yu and the others' voices sounded anxiously. Master! Be careful. He's a sage sovereign. Su Yu and the others wanted to rush up and use their bodies to block the attack for Luo Qingtong, but they were stopped by the latter. No one is allowed to come over. All of you, back off. Back off far away. The other party was a sage sovereign. No matter how many Su Yu and the others came, they would all be courting death. Luo Qingtong didn't want to have to worry about them when she was facing the other party. Master! Su Yu and the others were unwilling to obey the order with tears in their eyes. Luo Qingtong's voice sounded coldly at this moment. Didn't you hear what I said? Or are you saying that my words no longer hold any weight in your hearts? All of you, back off. Whoever dares to come up, from now on, in the world, in life or in death, I will no longer recognize him. She didn't come to save them to bring back a bunch of corpses. Since these people weren't willing to cherish themselves, why should she come to save them? Master! Su Yu and the others had tears in their eyes. At this moment, Hu Yinyang's voice suddenly sounded calmly. Listen to Master's orders, back off. She gritted her teeth and said, where there's life, there's hope. If Master is in trouble, we'll die together. Don't distract Master. Hearing her words, Su Yu and the others calmed down. They gritted their teeth and retreated far away with tears in their eyes. They looked at Luo Qingtong and the young man with worried and burning eyes. Boom, boom, boom. The moment Luo Qingtong passed the message to Su Yu and the others, the bloody light in her eyes flickered violently. She suddenly moved and dodged the other party's attack. At the same time, she slashed out the bloody cross in her hand one after another. The power and the heart of the 1,000-year soul guiding would continuously enter her body and transmitted to the life and death sword in her hand. It turned into a boundless and mighty attack violently swept forward. Although these attacks couldn't do anything to the young man, it was enough to obstruct his movements. Luo Qingtong's eyes. Bastard! The young man's eyes were bloodshot. The young man's strength was strong. He was clearly only a Saint Realm expert, but his attack was so formidable that it was practically comparable to the strength of a Saint Realm expert. How did she do it? The young man was Luo's. Originally, it was 70% anger mixed with 30% murderous intent. At this moment, it was 70% murderous intent and 30% anger. The other party's strength and potential were so strange and powerful that she would definitely become a huge threat in the future. He absolutely could not let her go back alive. Bang! The young man regained his senses, and his killing intent towards Luo Qingtong intensified. After Luo Qingtong dodged another attack, his eyes were filled with coldness. You're hiding like a rat in a ditch. Let's see how you're going to hide next. Multicolored Sacred Tiger. Chapter 1558. A huge multicolored tiger suddenly jumped out from the side and rushed toward Luo Qingtong. At the same time, the young man suddenly formed a hand seal. In an instant, those dead beast tamer King's Valley disciples contracted demonic beasts obeyed his command and rushed toward Luo Qingtong. This was the tyrannical power of the Beast Tamer King's Valley's beast taming art. The stronger the cultivator, the higher the level of the beast taming art. They could temporarily control those weaker beast tamers' contracted demonic beasts. The Beast Tamer King's Valley's beast tamers had a strict hierarchy. Those weaker beast tamers didn't dare to offend or fight against those stronger than them. Roar! Under the young man's command, those contracted demonic beasts rushed toward Luo Qingtong. At the same time, the young man's figure also rushed toward Luo Qingtong. These demonic beasts attacked from all directions. Nearly 7 or 8 contracted demonic beasts rushed toward Luo Qingtong, blocking Luo Qingtong's escape route. The young man came from the front. The aura under his sleeves was abnormally fierce and fierce. As long as he blocked the opponent's escape route, he would kill the opponent. Seeing the young man and those contracted demonic beasts rushing toward her, Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed. The strength of a saint master was too tyrannical. If the opponent really seized the opportunity to attack her, her body wouldn't be able to withstand it. After all, although she could borrow the power of the 1,000-year soul guiding wood to temporarily increase her attack power, she was still a saint master. However, her strength and defense were only at the saint realm. What should she do? Should she use that move in advance? But if that was the case, she wouldn't be able to win by surprise. If she couldn't kill him with that move and let the opponent guard against it, it would be even more troublesome. Just when Luo Qingtong was frowning, Little Pig's voice suddenly sounded in her mind. I say, did you forget something? 9-layer exquisite pagoda. It's the demon subduing pagoda. Although you can't use its power now, it won't be a problem for you to draw out a little bit of its aura to freeze these demonic beasts. That was the 9-layer pagoda that could even suppress it. In fact, if it hadn't used a lot of power in order to kill those blood demon vines before, it would have revealed a little bit of its soul aura pressure, which would definitely scare all these beastkins to the ground. What Saint Beast? To it, Saint Beast was not even worth mentioning. The demonic beasts under its feet that helped to cut its nails were not just holy beasts, okay? Little Pig's voice, Luo Qingtong's eyes, Luo Qingtong's eyes, Luo Qingtong's eyes, suddenly flashed. Following Little Pig's instructions, she drew out a little bit of the 9-layered exquisite pagoda's aura and wrapped it in her own aura. After that, he pretended to be panic-stricken as he darted left and right within the encirclement. However, he couldn't find any way to dodge or escape. Looking at Luo Qingtong's actions, the young man suddenly laughed out loud, and then rushed forward with a cold expression. "Stop daydreaming. You can't escape. Die." While speaking, his figure had quickly approached Luo Qingtong. Then, with a bang, an extremely violent and tyrannical attack blasted toward Luo Qingtong. Chapter 1559. Boom! Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed when she saw the incoming attack. The corners of her lips curled up. Good timing. The corners of her eyes flew up in an instant. At this moment, the flustered expression on her face turned into an evil and wanton one. At this moment, the young man's face, which was so beautiful that it could topple cities, became incomparably wild and domineering. Boom! She released the aura of the 9-story exquisite pagoda hidden in her mind and froze the contract demon beasts that were rushing over and blocking her way. The next second, heaven battling art. Luo Qingtong's figure quickly swept past the young man's attack and then brandished the life and death dual-right sword in her hand. In an instant, a breathtaking sword light that seemed to have transcended the primordial time swept out. Then, with a terrifying momentum that could directly attack the 9-story palace and destroy the world, it swept forward violently. Luo Qingtong's heaven-battling art was learned from Yi Qianxian. The man's strength was tyrannical and unparalleled in the world. Although this sword light was called the first move, it was difficult for any cultivation technique of the Saint realm or even higher to rival it. Luo Qingtong had met Yi Qianxian when she was in the martial general realm. After absorbing his power, she killed the supreme pavilion assassin of the half-saint realm with one sword move. At that time, the heaven-battling art was not even in its perfect state. At this moment, Luo Qingtong used her saint realm cultivation and the power of the Saint King's soul in the heart of the 1,000-year-old soul guiding wood to perform the heaven-battling art. It was almost a perfect demonstration of the absolute power of this move. Boom! The sword light flew toward the young man who was rushing toward Luo Qingtong in an absolutely breathtaking and terrifying manner full of murderous intent. The latter thought that Luo Qingtong was doomed and was about to enjoy her final struggle. However, the arrogant and proud expression on his face froze before it could fully appear. "What? This move of yours, how is this possible?" The young man looked at Luo Qingtong's attack in shock, and didn't even notice how Luo Qingtong had dodged his attack. His face twitched violently. Then, without caring about anything else, he hurriedly retreated. The enormous power contained in this sword light was simply too terrifying. How was this possible? How was this possible? His heart was frantically scrolling through the screen. He couldn't believe that such an attack, which had made him tremble from the bottom of his heart, had been launched by a sage youth on the opposite side. The other party was merely a Saint Realm expert. How was it possible for him to launch such a terrifying attack? The young man let out a shrill cry as he retreated. Under such an attack, he couldn't even resist it. Run! Run! The young man's figure rapidly retreated backwards. And Luo Qingtong's figure suddenly staggered after that attack, almost losing her balance. She had just drained all the power in the heart of the 1,000-year-old soul guiding wood. This time, she must kill the other party with one blow. Luo Qingtong looked coldly at the sword light that was chasing after the young man. The latter tried his best to retreat. But this sword light came too suddenly. He had only retreated 2 steps before the sword light caught up to him. Boom! The sword light slashed his body fiercely. In an instant, the young man let out a shrill scream. Chapter 1560. Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly narrowed. A translucent barrier suddenly rose from the young man's body, enveloping him in it and blocking Luo Qingtong's heaven-conquering art attack. The young man's blood-curdling scream came from his arm that was cut off by Luo Qingtong when he was caught off guard. Ah! He hugged the wound on his arm and looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong with hatred and horror. The opponent's attack was so powerful and fast that he didn't even have time to activate the defensive barrier on his body. One had to know that the defensive barrier on his body was a reward he received from the sect. It was a protective talisman personally bestowed by the Valley Master to activate the barrier. This barrier contained a trace of the Valley Master's power, but it couldn't be activated in time. Didn't this mean that Luo Qingtong's attack was completely capable of killing him in an instant? What kind of terrifying attack was this? A Saint Realm expert killing a Saint Realm expert? What kind of fantasy was this? The young man's face was horrified to the extreme. At the same time, his killing intent and hatred towards Luo Qingtong reached the extreme. Just a little bit more and he would have died under his opponent's sword. He even paid the price of a hand for this. The opponent deserved to die. No matter what, he absolutely couldn't let the opponent escape. If the young man had just treated Luo Qingtong as a genius similar to those from the hidden world, he would have thought that Luo Qingtong was a genius. Now, his fear and horror towards Luo Qingtong had risen to a terrifying level. He was definitely a monster that no one could hope to reach. There were so many geniuses in the hidden worlds, but none of them could reach the level of the opponent. What's more, the young man's gaze swept across the group of contracted demonic beasts that had been immobilized at some point in time, and the horror on his face deepened. His killing intent also deepened. The opponent must die. Otherwise, not only him, but also their beast-taming King Valley would be harmed. As he thought so, he suddenly released all his strength with a boom. His entire potential and strength burst out in an instant, exploding towards Luo Qingtong. That attack was more than twice as powerful as before. Seeing the attack rushing towards her, Luo Qingtong's expression turned grave. Her figure retreated rapidly. However, at this time, the contracted demonic beasts that were temporarily immobilized by the aura of the nine-layered exquisite pagoda also reacted and continued to rush towards Luo Qingtong. It just happened to seal off her escape route. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed slightly, and she was about to make a move. At this moment, boom! A strong gust of wind suddenly swept over at this moment. It didn't seem to be very fast, but in an instant, it came from behind Luo Qingtong and blocked the young man's attack. Boom! The two attacks collided. In an instant, a series of extremely violent and shocking forces suddenly blasted out in all directions. The contracted demonic beasts that were rushing towards Luo Qingtong screamed miserably, and then were sent flying by the extremely violent shock waves. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Luo Qingtong's eyes flickered with blood-red light. She leaped, avoiding the violent shock waves, and her figure appeared not far away. Chapter 1561. Seeing that his attack had been blocked, the young man's face turned cold and he immediately roared in the direction of the attack. "Humph, you don't have the right to know my name." As this cold voice rang out, in an instant. Boom! The strong wind that blocked the young man's attack suddenly shook. In an instant, the young man's attack blasted towards the young man at a speed countless times faster than before. The latter's face was aghast and he hurriedly tried to dodge. However, before he could do anything, the attack had already fiercely blasted on his body. With a bang, the young man's figure was instantly blasted away. At the same time, a figure suddenly appeared behind the place where Luo Qingtong had been standing. The man's figure seemed to have walked out of the sky, where all living things were floating and sinking. The black brocade robe was inlaid with flowing cloud patterns, and the edges were embroidered with silver embroidery. The flowing clouds hung low, making the man's figure seem to have come from the ninth heaven. However, the piercingly cold blood-red eyes were like swords and sabers. Paired with his extremely cold and handsome face, it made people feel that he was like the king of hell who had stepped out of a boundless blood prison. In short, he was both an immortal and a demon. The two completely different auras were unified and integrated in the man's body. When people saw him for the first time, they couldn't take their eyes off him. It was a kind of magnificence that was indescribable with words. This amazing talent was unparalleled in the world. Yi Qianxian. The moment she saw the man's figure appear, Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up and she immediately cried out. Humph! Yi Qianxian's face softly snorted. His eyes, which seemed to carry countless swords and sabers, swept across Luo Qingtong's face, but he didn't pay attention to her. He still remembered that Luo Qingtong had raised his cub as a pet. However, that was that. He was still very worried about Luo Qingtong. His gaze silently swept over Luo Qingtong's body. After confirming that there were no injuries on her body, the layer of ice in his eyes eased slightly. But soon, the coldness in his eyes gathered again. Who allowed you to touch her? His eyes were cold as he looked at the young man who was struggling to get up from the ground. The latter's face was filled with shock, and he coughed up blood as he crawled up. Yi Qianren's attack just now was able to injure him even through the defensive barrier on his body. The other party's strength was too strong. After all, that was a protective talisman bestowed by the Valley leader himself. The Valley Master was a saint venerable expert at the peak of the venerable realm. The young man's face was aghast. He looked in Yi Qianxian's direction and didn't dare to say a word. He crawled up and ran outside. The other party was obviously Yi Jiu's helper. Based on the fact that he had tried to kill Yi Jiu, this mysterious man who had suddenly appeared would definitely not spare him. As he thought of this, he ran even faster. However, no matter how fast he was, he couldn't be faster than Yi Qianxian. Chapter 1562. The aura was so powerful that it felt like Mount Tai was pressing down on him, and it immediately suppressed the young man where he stood. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't move an inch. This feeling was similar to when he used his own aura to suppress Su Yu and the others. This time, he had a taste of it himself. Wait! Trapped in Yi Qianxian's aura, the young man finally panicked. I'm from the beast-taming King's Valley, you can't kill me. Before he could finish his words, Yi Qianren crushed the defensive barrier around his body with a cracking sound. Beast-taming King's Valley. This sovereign doesn't care about you. The man's voice was cold. Although his voice wasn't loud, it contained absolute power and dominance. He looked at the young man with cold eyes and threw him to the side. Come here, he said to Luo Qingtong. Ha! Luo Qingtong looked at him in confusion, blinking her eyes. What's wrong? She walked to Yi Qianxian's side. He hadn't killed that man from the beast-taming King's Valley yet. Luo Qingtong frowned slightly as she looked at the young man who was struggling to get up from the ground after his defensive barrier was crushed. At this moment, kiss this sovereign. Cough cough, Luo Qingtong suddenly choked on a mouthful of saliva. She looked at the man in front of her in surprise. If she didn't misunderstand, this man was asking her for a kiss. Did he become so open after going out to prolong his life? Looking at the expression on her face, Yi Qianren's face instantly darkened. Don't you want to take revenge yourself? He looked coldly at Luo Qingtong. His brows were tightly knitted. If it wasn't for this woman, he would have killed that man from the beast-taming King's Valley at the beginning. He wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Oh! Luo Qingtong heard this and laughed. Her eyes curved slightly as she looked at the man standing opposite her with his hands behind his back. Her eyes were full of smiles. So he wanted her to kill this person. However, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly turned. She smiled at Yi Qianxian and said, "Sure. However, I already have enough power in my hands, so I don't need to borrow your power." As she spoke, she saw the man's face darken even more in an instant. She couldn't help but laugh. "Ha! I'm just kidding." As she spoke, her figure had already stuck close to Yi Qianming like a gust of wind. She raised her hand and hooked his neck down. Her lips pressed against his and her words disappeared between their lips. "If you want me to kiss you, just say it." Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes, looking like an evil and cunning cat. Her nimble little tongue went straight into Yi Qianming's mouth. The light in the man's eyes dimmed. Without saying anything, he raised his hand and clasped the back of her head. He took the initiative and overbearingly plundered her. At the same time, streams of aura flowed through Yi Qianming's body and into Luo Qingtong's body. Boom! Luo Qingtong licked her lips and smiled wickedly as she left Yi Qianming. Her body was already filled with Yi Qianming's aura and power. Heaven battling art. As Luo Qingtong shouted, the life and death sword in her hands suddenly burst out a peerless sword light. Chapter 1563. The latter was wrapped in Yi Qianming's aura and was unable to break free. When he saw Luo Qingtong's sword light flying towards him, his face was filled with despair. "No! You can't kill me!" He shouted hysterically, "I have a trace of the Valley Master's aura and divine sense on me. If you kill me, the Valley Master will immediately sense your presence. You can't kill me." The young man didn't care about anything else at this moment. He immediately revealed his final trump card. As an elite disciple of the beast-taming King Valley, his status in the beast-taming King Valley was naturally not low. Otherwise, he wouldn't have received the amulet personally bestowed by the beast-taming King Guguju. On his body, there was a trace of the beast-taming King Guguju's aura and divine sense. Once he was killed, that trace of aura would completely erupt. At the same time, that trace of divine sense would also remember the aura of the person who killed him. In the future, the beast-taming King Valley would seek revenge and exterminate the other party. The beast-taming King Valley was this overbearing and arrogant. However, after hearing his words, Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianming's faces didn't change at all. Boom! Luo Qingtong's sword ruthlessly slashed at his body. The young man screamed as an extremely powerful divine sense and aura suddenly erupted from his body. "Who killed my beast-taming King Valley's disciple?" The divine sense's voice was abnormally furious. Then with a boom, the trace of violent and ferocious aura that it contained rushed towards Luo Qingtong's attack. In an instant, it was like a turbulent sea and like a volcanic eruption, violently rushing towards Luo Qingtong. However, Luo Qingtong stood there motionless. Boom! Just as the attack was about to hit Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian's figure suddenly appeared beside Luo Qingtong and raised his hand to pull her into his embrace. Luo Qingtong chuckled and snuggled into his embrace. At the same time, her head rested on his chest, looking extremely comfortable and relaxed. Sensing her relaxed posture, Yi Qianxian's expression softly snorted, but the corners of his lips curled up slightly. This woman was trying to rely on him. This was good. His lips curled up slightly, and then his eyes looked coldly at the oncoming attack in front of him. Boom! His right sleeve shook, and in an instant, an extremely violent and ferocious attack was released. It was unknown how many times more powerful and terrifying it was than the attack that the other party had thrown at him. Annihilation. When Yi Qianren unleashed this move, the attack in front of him seemed to melt like snow that had met the sun. Ah! The divine sense hidden in the aura of power suddenly let out an extremely shrill scream. Then, as the attack dissipated, it also disappeared into thin air. Pfft! In the hidden world, in a luxurious pavilion in the beast-taming King Valley, the beast-taming King Guguju, who was resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes and then spat out a mouthful of blood. Valley Master. The servants and the surroundings hurriedly surrounded him. I'm fine. The beast-taming King Guguju raised his hand to stop them from coming forward to help him. A trace of my divine consciousness was destroyed. His face was filled with shock, then he shouted sternly, immediately go and check the life tablets of the elite disciples and elders. Chapter 1564. Someone immediately hurried over to report. Valley Lord. Not good. Senior Brother Han's life tablet has been shattered. Hearing this voice, Beast Tamer King Guguju's expression instantly changed. For no other reason. The Senior Brother Han, that this beast-taming King's Valley disciple spoke of was his most beloved disciple. Bastard! Beast Tamer King Guguju's face was filled with rage. Go and check it out immediately. Find out who dared to make a move against our Beast Tamer King's Valley. Once he found the culprit, he would definitely exterminate his entire family and 10 generations. Yes. The Beast Tamer King's Valley members hurriedly accepted the order and left. While Beast Tamer King Guguju was enraged, Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up as she looked at Yi Qianqian's attack. She could feel that this attack was much stronger than the heaven-conquering art, stealing heaven's fortune, she learned from Yi Qianxian. From the aura of this man's attack, it seemed to be of the same origin as the heaven-conquering art. Could it be another move of the heaven-conquering art? With this thought, Luo Qingtong's heart was suddenly filled with eagerness to try it out. She already knew the power of the heaven-conquering art, so she naturally knew how powerful this move that was created by this man was. She looked at Yi Qianxian with burning eyes and asked, Qianren, what is this move called? Luo Qingtong's eyes turned slightly as she approached Yi Qianxian with a smile. Humph, crafty. Yi Qianxian looked at her crafty face and lightly snorted. This woman, only at times like this would she be unusually obedient and look like a harmless cat. Want to learn? He looked at the bright light in Luo Qingtong's eyes. Okay. The light in Luo Qingtong's eyes was crafty and she directly turned Yi Qianren's question into an affirmative sentence. Yi Qianxian looked at her and lightly snorted, but didn't say anything. Even if Luo Qingtong didn't mention this move, he was prepared to teach it to her. The girl's strength had now risen to the saint realm. The power and effect of the heaven-seizing move from before were not very great anymore. This move of annihilation was sufficient to allow her to face Saint Realm and even Saint Realm experts when she wasn't around. She might not necessarily be at a disadvantage. With this thought, Yi Qianxian immediately said, Come with me. He was about to take her away, but Luo Qingtong. Wait, I'll go tell Su Yu and the others some things. As she spoke, she left Yi Qianren's embrace and walked towards Su Yu and the others who were not far away. The moment Yi Qianren appeared, everyone was suppressed by the powerful aura emitted from his body, unable to move. Only after the battle had ended did he recover. Mistress. Su Yu and the others looked at Luo Qingtong with excitement and tears in their eyes. Fortunately, their mistress was fine. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to forgive themselves. Luo Qingtong looked at them and nodded. You guys go back to Wildland City first. I've already asked Snowball to send Chu Lingfeng back. After you guys go back, take over all the family businesses that have been destroyed. From now on, I want only my influence in Wildland City. Luo Qingtong's eyes were heavy as she looked at the family forces and family who. Yes. Everyone hurriedly responded. Especially the people from the family forces. They watched the battle between Luo Qingtong and the people from beast-taming King Valley. They were shocked by the powerful strength and terrifying potential displayed by Luo Qingtong. The girl's strength was really too strong. Most importantly, she was still very young. No one knew what level she could reach in the future. And the most important thing was that Chapter 1565. The man's strength was far beyond their imagination. The divine will attack that burst out from the young man's body was so powerful and terrifying. The group of people who were watching from afar were almost shocked out of their wits by the power contained within. It could be said that if not for Yi Qianqian's power lingering around them, restricting their freedom and protecting them at the same time, they would not have been able to escape. It was likely that more than half of them who were not strong enough would be killed by the powerful force of the divine sense attack. The remaining people would most likely be heavily injured as well. Even under such circumstances, Yi Qianren was able to completely destroy the divine will and attack with just a simple gesture. There was not a single trace of it left behind. In this way, how would the people of the beast-taming King's Valley know that Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian had done it? The man's strength was so strong that it was beyond their imagination. The Blackfield's reputation as the supreme overlord was indeed well-deserved. The group of people looked at Yi Qianxian with respect and fear. Even the way they looked at Luo Qingtong was the same. Even more than that. Not for other reasons, but because Luo Qingtong was their master. Moreover, to be able to obtain the protection of the Blackfield's Ming Zun was not something an ordinary person could do. No matter what, at this moment, they were extremely fearful of their master, Luo Qingtong, and they wanted to submit to her. You all go back with them. Just as Luo Qingtong was instructing Su Yu and the rest, Yi Qianqian's voice also rang out at this moment. Bei Qing, who was hiding at the side, rushed over and heard it. From today onwards, Wild City and even the entire western wilderness will only have one master. That was Luo Qingtong. Yi Qianqian's voice was faint, but the meaning in his words was unquestionable. Since Luo Qingtong did not want to stay under his wing, then he would help her to pave the road ahead for her. Yes. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others understood and immediately agreed. Then, they concealed themselves and left with Su Yu and the others. As for Luo Qingtong, she walked towards Yi Qianxian. The man wrapped his arm around her waist and disappeared with a wave of his sleeve. Far West Wilderness, Savage City. A group of clans and forces that were not strong enough were looking in the direction of the sage monarch's tomb from above the city wall, guessing in their hearts who would be the biggest winner in this trip to the tomb. They did not dare to send people to investigate, lest they be treated as people with ulterior motives and dealt with. However, no one had expected that the tomb would suddenly collapse while they were still looking at it. It really collapsed. Everyone was dumbfounded as they looked ahead. Smoke and dust filled the air as far as their eyes could see. Waves of rumbling sounds rang out continuously. They could not believe their eyes. Oh my God! The tomb had collapsed. Everyone was shocked. At this moment, someone suddenly reacted. Ha ha ha! The sage monarch's tomb has collapsed. Doesn't that mean that all the people inside are dead? That person let out a long laugh and suddenly flew into the air, flying towards the city. Looking at his departing figure, the people around him suddenly came to their senses in an instant. That's right, the sage monarch's tomb had collapsed. If there were no accidents, all the people inside should be dead. Chapter 1566. After all, after losing so many powerhouses and masters, even a top family would become as weak as a small family. With that thought in mind, everyone was overjoyed. Ha ha ha. God is on our side. I didn't expect such a good thing and opportunity to happen even though we didn't manage to enter the tomb. Ha ha. Not only did we manage to survive, but the properties and heritage of these powerful family forces will also belong to us. Everyone was overjoyed and returned to their respective families. They gathered their forces and headed to the families that had gone to the tomb to plunder. Family who was the first to be targeted? After all, among all the families that had gone to the tomb, family who was the weakest. However, the resources and heritage they had were comparable to the top families. Under such circumstances, everyone naturally had their eyes on it. Family whose people opened the door. Everyone gathered their forces and teams and headed to family who. They surrounded the people that had stayed behind to guard family who. Hand over all of family whose properties and heritage, and we'll spare your lives. Especially that ye Joe's things. The eyes of the forces that had come to surround family who flashed with greed. Most of them had come here for family whose properties and heritage. Secondly, they were here for Luo Qingtong's elixir. The elixir that Luo Qingtong had taken out at the Sage Monarch's Tomb Convention was shocking. Even if family who didn't have such an elixir, it would be best if they had other extremely effective elixirs. They knew that Hu Zhongtian and his son, Hu Fei, were saved by Yi Zhou. As for the people that had stayed behind to guard family Hu, the people from these forces sneered coldly. They would kill them all after they got the elixir. To prevent future trouble. After all, Yi Zhou's background was mysterious. Who knew if there were other forces behind her? If they got the news and wanted to avenge her, then they would all be in trouble. Everyone's eyes were vicious. The people that had stayed behind to guard family who were cold. Dream on. There was a group of heavenly diabolism's men among those who stayed behind. Luo Qingtong was afraid that the Hu family and the Ouyang family would play dirty tricks after she left, so she left a team of Tian Xie's men to guard the family Hu. At this moment, they were facing the people who had come to besiege family Hu. Their faces were cold and stern. She wanted her master's things. Dream on. Humph. You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Then wait for your deaths. Seeing that the people guarding family who were not moved by their words, the people who came to besiege family who were instantly enraged. They waved their hands and shouted, "Attack! Let them die without a complete corpse." Following their shouts, the group of people charged towards family Hu. In the dark arena. After a steward reported the news, he asked, "Chief, should we send someone to help family Hu?" "No need." Chief Steward Chang's expression was indifferent. The reason they had helped family Hu before was because of Yi Zhou. Now that the Saint King's tomb had collapsed, they didn't know whether Yi Zhou was alive or dead. If he had really died in the Saint King's tomb, they had no need to help family Hu. Moreover, Luo Qingtong had only used the guest elder token once. The reason why he helped the other party was because the other party's literary skills were truly outstanding and extremely valiant. Chapter 1567. Originally, when he reported Yi Zhou's information to the headquarters, they were very interested and prepared to send someone to contact her. Who would have thought that something would happen to her so soon? With that thought in mind, Chief Steward Ching immediately waved his hand and prepared to dismiss the steward. Right at this moment, his eyes suddenly narrowed as if he had sensed something. He abruptly turned his head and looked in the direction of the city gate. His eyes were slightly startled. Then, with a sudden movement, he leaped out. Bang! In the family Hu, the group of people who had surrounded the family Hu were attacking one another. Beams of light shot out from their hands one after another. In an instant, all kinds of attacks were launched at the people guarding family Hu. The heavenly diabolism's people immediately took out their spiritual qi guns. At the same time, they released the Gu Mother. This was something that Luo Qingtong had specially left for them before she left. Anyway, in the Saint King's tomb, the Gu venomous insects could only play a limited role against the powerhouses of the Huo clan and Ouyang clan. It was better to leave them for those who stayed behind. This way, if the Huo clan and Ouyang clan were to play any dirty tricks, they would have a way to deal with it. However, Luo Qingtong probably didn't expect that these goo worms were not prepared for the Huo family and the Ouyang family, but for these people who came to besiege them. Buzz! As the goo mother flapped its wings, countless goo worms flew out at its call and flew towards the people charging towards it. This time, many of these unguarded family clans and forces fell into the trap. Many people were directly swarmed by the goo worms and were instantly devoured into a pile of bones. Some people had their brains invaded by goo worms, and they started rolling on the ground and slashing at each other like crazy. The scene was in chaos. Damn it! Looking at the scene in front of them, the patriarchs of the various forces who organized this siege had ugly and furious expressions on their faces. All of you, get out of the way! They shouted and attacked at the same time. With a boom, the strength and aura they poured in together enveloped all the goo worms in front of them. Then, they shouted angrily, "Everyone, attack together! Let's see how long these family who people can last. Later, I will skin all of them alive and hang them on the city gate." These family who people were really stubborn. They were courting death. However, just as they finished speaking, before the others could respond, they heard an extremely cold and furious voice from behind them. "You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Really? I will do my best to satisfy your requests." As he spoke, sounds of attacks rang out one after another. In an instant, the screams of the people from the various families and forces could be heard everywhere. The masters of the forces who controlled the goo worms also turned their heads as if they had seen a ghost when they heard the voice. Hu Zhongtian. Everyone looked at the group of people who had appeared behind them in shock. Hu Zhongtian, Hu Fei, Su Yu, and the others looked at them with cold and stern expressions. Then, Siyu suddenly waved his hand and ordered coldly, "Attack. Kill them all. These people deserve to die. How dare they attack family who while they were not around?" You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.